On December 27, 1892, Livingstone and Biddle College, now known as Johnson C. Smith University, played in Salisbury, North Carolina, with Biddle winning 5-0. Over time, HBCU football has evolved. HBCU football's popularity continues to rise. Millions attend games each year and millions more watch on television. The HBCU bands provide some of the top entertainment in the country. Over that time, some of the best players to ever play in the National Football League played at HBCUs. Every Monday through Friday on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, national radio and television host Donal Ware takes a look at what's happening in HBCU football and talks with coaches, players, administrators, and media about the season. Make sure you join the conversation on social media now. Here's your host, Donal Ware.
You've got it locked to the HBCU Football Daily Podcast for today, Monday, September 25th. I'm Donal Ware. Hope you had a wonderful weekend, and thank you for your patience with us on this HBCU Football Daily Podcast. Had been dealing with some family issues the last couple of days, still dealing with those issues. However, I'm going to try to bring you the HBCU Football Daily Podcast as much as I can this week. So stick with us. And of course, we have other great content on the box2row.com page, as well as on the Box to Row YouTube channel. It was an interesting week in week 4, and so we'll get right to things as it relates to the week 4 scoreboard. Things kicked off on Thursday. Alabama A&M getting its first victory of the season, 31-24 over Arkansas Pine Bluff. Alabama A&M got some really, really good quarterback play in that football game. And I think if the Bulldogs can get some consistency at quarterback, they're going to be a pretty solid football team. That said, I'm not sure if there's a team in the SWAC that can beat Florida A&M. Another victory, 23-10 over a solid and well-coached Alabama State team. And, you know, Florida A&M is getting it done defensively and offensively. It's not like the offense is putting up an inordinate amount of points, but it's putting up enough points while the defense has been really, really good. So balance between offense and defense for the Rattlers. They had almost 19,000 there in Tallahassee. And that program, I think under Willie Simmons, it was always supported, but I think under Willie Simmons, it's getting much more support now. I mean, 19,000 at a football game, especially on, you talk about on the FCS level, is pretty good. So 19,000 in Tallahassee to see the Rattlers get another victory. Jackson State gets back in the win column, trying to keep pace as much as it can with Florida A&M. But not only is it one game back of Florida A&M has the head-to-head tiebreaker. But anyway, Jackson State getting by Bethune-Cookman 22-16, and Jackson State. It's good. It's a good season. Again, we can talk about a number of different things. You got 70 new players coming into a program. It's going to take some time to gel. Plus, Jackson State has lost. His couple of losses are to some good football teams as well. Bethune-Cookman continues to fight. I think Bethune-Cookman is going to be fine over the course of the season. North Carolina Central in the Circle City Classic in Indianapolis, all over Mississippi Valley State, 45-3. They have quarterback Walker played in that game. Walker Harris, name was escaping me for a minute there. He had a sensational game. No need to rush Davius Richard back. Like, no need to really rush him back, especially in that game. Mississippi Valley State just continues to struggle. It was Prairie View A&M getting back in the win column, 23-20 over Alcorn State. That's an important game. It's a big win for Prairie View A&M, because not only does it get back into the win column, it's now 2-0 in SWAC play, 2-0 specifically in the division with wins over Texas Southern and now Alcorn State. And Alcorn State was one of the teams going to challenge in the West. Of course, Southern is still right there. But again, Prairie View A&M now 1 up, really 2 up on both Alcorn State and Texas Southern. Speaking of Texas Southern, falling to Grambling 35-23, and Grambling still right there. Back-to-back wins now for the Tigers. See if they can kind of continue that momentum. Morgan State falling in overtime to Albany 23-17 after that really nice win by the Bears to start the season over Richmond, and then an almost or should have been victory over FBS Akron. You're talking, but the Bears lost that game. So since the victory over Richmond, you're not talking about 3 straight losses for Morgan State, but still in good position, still a very good defense. MEAC play doesn't begin for several weeks now. Tell you a really big win. Norfolk State over Towson, 21-14. And again, to me, I thought the Norfolk State victory over Hampton. Okay, and remember, I talked about this. You're bouncing back from a loss to Virginia State. Okay, now Virginia State's a good program, but if you're Norfolk State, you're at home. That's a football game you got to win. So you bounce back the next week and beat a Hampton team who the following week defeated Howard. And, okay, then the next week for Norfolk State, meaning last week, drop a game to Temple. You expect that because they're stepping up in play. Well, to come back and beat a good Towson team, I don't know how good Towson is, but to beat a Towson team, an FCS opponent out of the CAA 21-14, and even your record at 2-2. And I was on a podcast, the HBCU Huddle podcast. As a matter of fact, Mike Wallace and CJ do a tremendous job with that. You should give that a watch and a listen. The HBCU Huddle is under the Memphis Grizzlies, which they're really thinking outside of the box. Anyway, I was saying, watch out for Norfolk State, especially when we're talking about, because the question was, is there any team that can challenge North Carolina Central? Well, I think Norfolk State's right there. I think Morgan State's right there as well to challenge the Eagles for that MEAC title. But again, we're talking about several weeks before we see MEAC play. Delaware State dropping another one. Now 0-4 in the season, losing to Miami of Ohio 62-20, putting up some points. I think, again, if Coach Hull can get some solid quarterback play for Delaware State, we'll see what happens. I'm not sure what their remaining the Hornets' remaining non-conference schedule looks like. So they have 2 more non-conference games before the Hornets get in to MEAC play. South Carolina State with a nice victory. That's a good victory over the Citadel at home, 31-10. And so South Carolina State now with its first victory of the season, getting it done. A good balance, a good mix between offense and defense. Tuskegee remained undefeated, gets by Lane 28-22 in double overtime. So that's a big victory for Tuskegee, who remains one of a few handful of teams that remain undefeated. Bowie State gets by St. Augustine's 10-7. It was Allen remaining undefeated. We had Teddy Keaton as the head football coach on the program on this past weekend's edition of Box to Row. Defeated Central State, had to go to Ohio to defeat Central State 34-20. Had to overcome a lot of turnovers to get the victory. Boy, Benedict continues to be dominant. This is a dominant football team. 31-3 victory over Shawan. Shaw University finally gets the victory. First victory of the season for the Bears, defeating Elizabeth City State 20-17. Fort Valley State continues to remain in contention for the SIAC title. It's only got 1 loss to start the season to Tuskegee, but that was a non-conference game in that Red Tails Classic. 31-9 over Kentucky State. Johnson C. Smith. Watch Johnson C. Smith in the CIAA's Southern Division. I think the CIAA Southern Division could be wide open, a little bit more wide open than we've seen in past years, because Fayetteville State is just dominated. But Johnson C. Smith gets the 27-20 victory over Lincoln of Pennsylvania. Speaking of another Lincoln, boy, it continues to be tough for Lincoln of Missouri, losing 59-0 to Northwest Missouri State, still playing that MIAA schedule, even though the Blue Tigers are not in the MIAA. They're going to make the move. This is a transitional year and make the move back to the Great Lakes Conference, Great Lakes Valley Conference on next season. Edward Waters, first victory of the season, 31-13 over Morehouse. Boy, things continue to not go well for Morehouse, who's now 0-4 on the season. Hasn't done well since Morehouse and Coach Freeman parted ways. Albany State, big victory, 2 in a row now for the Golden Rams over Savannah State, 15-12 in that Coastal City HBCU Classic, played in a city that I enjoy going to, small city, but I enjoy going to from time to time, which is Brunswick, Georgia. Virginia Lynchburg, 0-3 on the season now, falling to Robert Morris, 46-0. It was Miles with another victory, continues to remain undefeated in SIAC play, defeated Clark Atlanta 55-14. Arkansas Baptist falling to Oklahoma Panhandle State 31-17. Langston getting its first victory of the season over Texas College, who continues to struggle 47-6. Virginia State remains undefeated. Shut out Livingstone, who is now remains winless, 33-0. In a really good football game, a field goal. It seems like when Fayetteville State plays, field goals decide games. Remember, I think it was the opening game of the season, losing to Pembroke on a field goal. Well, Fayetteville State, no time on the clock, gets the field goal, defeats previously undefeated Virginia Union, who is now 3-1 on the season, 10-7. That game was in Richmond, a big win for Fayetteville State on the road, and could be, we'll see, could be a preview of the CIAA championship. West Virginia State, legit. Now, back-to-back weeks when quarterback Donovan Riddick may not have had his best performance, still a phenomenal quarterback, but may not have had his best performance anyway on homecoming, 31-24 over Glenville State, who was at one of the top teams also in the Mountain East Conference. So I think this is the year that West Virginia State will really compete and can try to compete for that Mountain East championship, Mountain East Conference championship. Final game, Winston-Salem State defeated Bluefield State 30-0. Winston-Salem State now evens its record to 2-2 on the season. More importantly, 2-0 in conference play. Can Winston, Bluefield State they play hard. Right now, Bluefield State it's Bluefield State's first year in the league, and we remember what Bluefield State was able to do last year against some CIAA opponents. Hasn't carried over to this year, but I still think it's a well-coached team, solid team. You can shut out a team like that. Is this the year that Winston-Salem State can also compete for the Southern Divisions? You got Winston-Salem State right there. You've got, of course, Johnson C. Smith, as I mentioned, and you've also got Fayetteville State as the defending champs. So that's going to wrap it up for today's HBCU Football Daily Podcast. We'll have an HBCU Football Daily Podcast on tomorrow, Takeaway Tuesday. So again, be patient with us this week, dealing with some family stuff this week. So, but again, some great content on box2row.com as well as the Box to Row YouTube channel. So search around for some of that great content. Also depends on when you're watching this. If you may be, whether you're watching it in the morning or later on, if you're watching it in the afternoon, then at least by 4 p.m. Eastern, really by about 8 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, we will have posted the HBCU Players of the Week. Then also we'll also post the HBCU coaches and media polls as well. Tell a couple of friends about the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, where you can watch on the Box to Row YouTube channel, as well as listening on box2row.com, as well as iHeartMedia.com. Takeaway Tuesdays tomorrow. I'll talk with you then.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. You can also listen to the podcast at boxtorow.com, iHeartMedia, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to get your HBCU football fix on Box to Row with Donal Ware each weekend on the radio station near you, and on SiriusXM on HBCU, Channel 142, and on ESPNU Radio on SiriusXM, Channel 84. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Box to Row for the latest in HBCU football, and don't forget to tell a friend.